Thank you, everyone, for joining our event today. I have a great speaker again, and you're going to really enjoy this. I'm so glad you came. And his name is Stan Barabas. And Stanley has been traveling and doing research about the corporation that we're going to be talking about. We've talked about in some of my other interviews, the 1871 Corporation and other corporations. So Stan and I share this passion for finding out how our republic was stolen from us, the fraud that was committed, how they did it, and how we can undo this situation. And so he and I have been on a similar track here for quite a few years. But he has a kind of what I think is a very clear, unique way of explaining it all and a very clear understanding of it. So I wanted him to share his experience on this journey and kind of describe what he has found with us today. So Stan, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, Clyde. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. The more of us that are, doing what we're doing, the more people that probably start paying attention, especially after what we've experienced here, at the beginning of the year. So people are starting to see that there's something not right, and they want to know what to do about it and what we can do, if anything.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Exactly. So if you just tell everybody a little bit about your background, and then let's dig into this.
Yeah, well, pretty not, we're all special, but no one's special in the realm of, like the big names that we hear in learning about all this stuff. But my individual perspective at a young age was that nothing ever seemed right, and I could never pinpoint it. And as I got older, started doing my diligence, and rather than being entertained, I chose to be educated. And so I, turned off the television and stopped getting entertained and doing the things that I used to do, and started really focusing on what's going on here and doing my own diligence. And to fast track to today, I heard of Audubon rights. I heard of the assemblies. I've heard of many different assemblies and the frauds. And there's so much information out there, information, disinformation. And just recently in December, I decided to take the leap and to correct my status with the American States Assembly with that format, because it looked and made sense to me based on all the research I've done and everybody else has done. Because once we get down this information path, we'll see that there is a political status. There's such thing called a political status. And through all that, years of research, there you go. And so we find that at birth we were, crib napped, as some like to call it, and they literally made us dead on paper.
Right.
And we didn't know it. And that's what they would call unilateral or unconscionable contracting through this whole course of theft, semantic deceit, whatever you want to call it. We've been frauded since birth for many years. I heard Anna saying her last webinar this past Monday goes back about 800 years, probably even further. But, she said something about 800 years ago when the whole conglomeration got going. And so now that brings us today where we're at with this whole event. The hammer has dropped. And so now we're literally facing some interesting times now, because many of our of this human race are not going to be with us very soon. And we've got a state of affairs where those of us that are aware are going to be the ones left standing. And I think we are the ones that are going to be at the pinnacle of this next, if you want to call it a revolution or reconstruction or whatever it is up to us to bring in this, this new era, if you will.
Great awakening, if some people are.
Yeah, the Great Awakening, whatever you want to call it. But we were in some interesting times, and there's nothing to be in fear of, because the fear is what's got us in this in the first place. They've through the unconscionable contracting and the corporate policies, statutes, codes, ordinances, and everything, and their policy enforcers, which unfortunately the men and women that do law enforcement, they were incorrectly educated. And it's unfortunate. Our consciousness has been stolen. Mm-hmm. All of us, the entire world. And that's kind of what we're facing. And People who want to exercise brutality and bullying, they look for those kind of people because they can go ahead and enforce their corporate policies, which is all they are. If by now people haven't realized and done their diligence that we are dealing with foreign service contractors, which is a corporation, from the eastern side, let's just put it that way.
Well, why don't we explain to him, if you could, what our founders provided for us, which was a republic, and then how it's been shifted into something else.
Well, it's funny. I just read a great article. 1954, we went from common law, which is common law of the land, right? Mm-hmm. And that turned into equity trust law, which is maritime admiralty law, which is commerce law. It's all for business, right? It's ecclesiastical, so it's all from the church, the Vatican, the Pope, and so from the time of just after the Civil War, we were supposed to reconstruct the United States of America into the self-governing land and soil jurisdiction the way it was. But instead of doing that, subcontractors were brought in and sold out and selling us our goods and services back to us. All of our public services.
That had a lot to do with the debt from the Civil War, right? Is that we're able to do that?
Yeah, I mean, the bankruptcies and all that kind of stuff. They were supposed to reconstruct the bankruptcies, and that never got done. So all this deception and fraud came from that era. And and even before, because even they say back at Lincoln, he was still a bar attorney, and there was the Constitution say that no attorneys can hold office as a president, right? So we have that. So there's so much deception and manipulation, which I like to call it, that's gone on. I mean, other than going over all those the hard details, it's like we can see today with this past election, with this event, that there is a rogue group of individuals worldwide controlling everything. Mm-hmm. And, it doesn't take much to be able to see that unless your consciousness has totally been captured. Right. And that's what this is all about, is consciousness. They've stolen our consciousness since birth, and implementing it through fear, through distractions of the television, or we can call it the Roman civil procedure, if you will, of bread and circuits. Keep us entertained and fed, and we know we're none the wiser, right?
Right.
And they keep us in this Roman civil law, this ecclesiastical and trusts and all this deception created to capture us and control us, right? Exactly. And we can see that. We have no right to choose whether we want to do anything with our body. They're trying to force that. And look at the consent, literally shutting down cities, shutting them down, nobody on the streets, in fear, right? And if you go out, they strong arm you. We are in a communist country. Right.
Right. We have been for quite a while. If you just use as a judge of whether we're communists or not, if you just look at I believe it's 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto by Marx, every one of those planks, which is basically the manifesto of how you take a democracy or a republic and turn it into a communist country, all of those 10 planks have been accomplished in this country.
Yeah, Clyde, I'll share with you that 73-page text that I discovered a couple of days ago. It explains this all very well, and I suggest you get shared vastly. But yeah, I mean, this whole deception is deep, far, and wide, and we definitely need to do something. Let me correct myself. When I say it's a communist country, that's kind of a mistake. It's not a communist country. The country has been overtaken by foreign subcontractors, right? And the land has not been populated by people. Everybody's dead on paper within the District of Columbia, which by US code, you can read yourself, the United States resides within the District of Columbia, right? So that's a 69 square miles. Some people have been calling it 10, but the most recent definition I found was 69 square miles. And we all live dead on paper within that territory.
Yeah, as US citizens, which you and I are not anymore. Right.
And then that's your current political status as a U.S. citizen from birth, until one says, "Oh, I realized that I'm not a U.S. citizen. I was born on the state of Utah, which makes me a national of that state. So now I've declared my status as a Utahn, right? As a national of the state of Utah." And that would be called, in Bouvier's law, that would be called jus soli. You know, you're a nation of the state you were born, in which you were born. And so many of us have realized the fraud, Anna von Reitz being one of them, and many others. There are many, I would call them controlled opposition, or, detractors or distractors out there that are trying to keep people in that municipal citizen status and saying, hey, you don't need to correct your status. Well, that is, if anybody knows anything about anything, that's incorrect, because you are being classified as a U.S. citizen, as an indentured servant and federal employee of the United States, which resides within the district territorial place of District of Columbia in DC.
And that is a corporation. It is not the original republic. And that's what people need to understand. It's a corporation.
Right. That is the democracy. Yeah.
Yeah. And
the republic lies outside of the District of Columbia, which is not populated until now. Right. Many people have corrected their status, right, Clyde? But they've never assembled. So you got many people that have corrected their status and learned how to navigate the equity and trust law Article 1 courts. But however, have they ever been able to hold anybody accountable for their trespass?
No, not that.
And why is that?
Yeah, because we haven't assembled yet.
We haven't assembled and established our land common law courts.
Our land.
Right? Everybody talks about air and water courts, and that's how they're learning to navigate, but they're not assembling to assemble the jurists and justices needed on the land, because the people aren't populating the state. Like the state, like David Strait will tell you, has meets and bounds, right? The Florida, the state, has a geographical meets and bounds, right? And it's not populated by we the people yet. Well, until now, like I'm a people, right. My state, my state of being is on the state of Florida, or Florida, the state, not the state of, on Florida, the state, and we are assembling, and I have assembled with others and many others coming on board like yourself in other states to bring back the actual states of the union.
Right. Yeah. Now you're actually a Utahn who is residing in Florida, but you're a state national. And I'm a Hoosier and from Indiana. So, I'm an Indiana state national residing in the state of Florida. So because we're state nationals residing in Florida, we have the ability to help bring the Florida Republic back and actually have it be acting and restoring, like you said, the courts, law enforcement, all of that. And that's what we are doing. The beauty of it to me is there's a quote from Buckminster Fuller. Yeah, that quote about the model. If you're trying to fight the institution, that's established institution, and you're just going to be banging your head against the wall, because those institutions have so many people are tied into that institution. They have, they're not going to give up their power, their wealth, whatever it is. But if you can create a new model, and people find that new model works better for them, then they'll leave that old institution and it will crumble, because everybody's left it and has now come over to this other one. That's exactly, to me, what we are doing. What you and I and everybody, David Strait and Judge Anna and everyone involved in the Assembly of the States around the country, what we're doing is we are literally creating that model day by day. And at some point, I got to believe that there's going to be a phased transition, and we're going to have a certain amount of people, a few million of us, that have done this and shown people that this model works, and everybody's going to do their paperwork, come over peacefully, leave these evil corporations in the dust with nobody to pay their taxes. And what people have to understand, one of the things you need to understand, is once you become a state national and you're no longer a US citizen, you are no longer liable for their income taxes. You're no longer liable for their property taxes. and you can own your property, a lloydal title, and you owe no taxes to anyone. So, am I right on that, or is there anything I missed in that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too well versed in that. The alloidal I heard was something that you might want to avoid. Now, I'm not sure. I'll forward you some land patent stuff that I found about, but I was hearing that land patents and fixture lien, UCC
Oh, is that the better way to go? The land
I
patent?
think
Okay.
it might be.
Okay.
I'm not 100% on this because I'm not well studied on it, but I've recently delved into something, and I'll share it with you.
Okay.
That kind of said you don't, kind of want to get away from that because it's kind of still ownership to the,
Okay.
the British royalty or something like that. So,
Okay. That makes
but
sense. That makes
yeah,
sense to me. Okay. So the
yeah.
land
So
patent, we should probably use that term, land patent. Yeah.
land patents, yeah. And so yeah, there's so much. See, I mean, a license, you need a license for everything, right? And what I've just learned recently, it's all unilateral contracting. So if I offer, it's not bilateral. So like David Strait will tell you, on the land and soil jurisdiction, you have a bilateral contract. So let's say you and I, Clyde, we have an agreement. We have a meeting of the minds, right? Right now we're having a meeting of the minds, right? We would discuss the terms of the contract, and then there would be privity of the contract, right?
Right.
There would also be 2 wet signatures on that contract. Well, the way we've been duped is like, let's look at a driver's license. Well, there's the DMV over there, right? And they offer driver's licenses and tags, right? Well, our parents, when we got the car, said, well, you got to go get your driver's license and you got to go get your tags, right? Because they didn't know either. So back whenever that started, it's a unilateral contract. They offer it, but the man, right, does not need that to travel unencumbered on the private roadways, right? Because you're not operating commerce. So under the United States is all uniform commercial code, right? So if I was doing Uber or, transporting goods from one place to another in commerce, in business, then I would be required to have a driver's license because I'm operating in commerce, right? However, if I'm just going to my friend's house or the store, I don't need a license. I don't need a registration. I don't need insurance. I don't need any of that because I'm traveling in my conveyance from point A to point B without, not for hire, and I'm not accepting any profit, right?
Right.
So that means I'm just in my private capacity traveling. Well, they've duped us into thinking that we have to have these things, right? So we unconscionably contract through a unilateral contract that we agree to and that we're silent about. So we voluntarily go in and accept these benefits, which we think they are. And that's why the officer can say to you, driving is a privilege. Well, if you hand him your driver's license and your registration, you just agreed to the contract, the unilateral contract that you.
Whoops.
But they didn't explain to you the terms and conditions, right? So it was a unilateral contract.
Right.
So now through my silent consent, I agreed to the contract. So yes, I'm liable. So we have to unlearn everything that we were taught. It's literally flipping the entire script because it's been inverted. Everything's been inverted. Literally everything that we think we know until we go down this path, we start to see that everything has been inverted. Everything is out there for profit. So, a corporation by definition is for profit for its stockholders, right? Board members and all that stuff. And anybody that really wants to deny that the United States is a corporation, just go to United States Code and look at the definitions. It's all there. You know what I mean? You can't deny the definitions of the United States Code. USC, I think 2815 3002 will tell you that the definition of United States is federal corporation,
Exactly.
Yeah. So people really, if they want to learn anything about this, we really have to do our own diligence, not even just watching videos like this, but going in and doing your own diligence where you're not believing something, because there's a difference in believing and perceiving. If you look at the definitions of believe, it means you are agreeing to take on a thought processes of whatever that is, right? I believe that, something I have no knowledge about, but I'll believe it and accept it as truth. Well, when you perceive something, that means you have consciousness, awareness of the facts of it, right? So we're all believing that this stuff is real and true, but we have no conscious awareness of the facts. right?
We grew up, especially our generation, we just grew up with it. Our parents all
Exactly.
accepted it. And you know, it was, and so we've just grown up that that's, you know, something that we have to do. But now it's all being uncovered. This truth is starting to come out, and more people are waking up. So the belief, like you said, is very important. You're right. It's starting to change. And that's what I think, you know, occurs in a phase transition, which I believe we are in. And that's what the Great Awakening really is. It's changing our belief system. And
Yeah, well, actually getting rid of belief system altogether, and being in the position of perceiving. Because right now, after the election, right, a lot of people believed that their guy was going to win, right? But after that didn't happen, now their beliefs got shattered, but what they perceived was different, right? So they perceived it because they became conscious that, oh my gosh, how could that happen?
Right.
So they perceived the reality, but whatever they're believing after this point is the false reality, because people are kicking that can down the road, right? They're believing that that's still going to happen at some point, not realizing that even if that's the case, that this man, you know, that was there said in his speech, I'm giving this back to America. Well, if he gives it back, what does that mean? That means it's up to you. Just like he told David Strait in the Rose Garden in his first video of the Arizona conference, after the first minute 125 to about 7 minutes, he says he had a conversation with Trump in the Rose Garden, and he said if I had one question to ask Trump, what would it be? And he had that opportunity, and he asked him, he said, well, Mr. President, he goes, we're supposed to have so many people in Congress per population, right? Per X amount of people. And he goes, yep. And he goes, and we only have 400 and something. We're supposed to have maybe 11 or 13,000 in Congress. So that makes Congress sin die, which means until a later date, right? So right now, there is no Congress, right? It's sin die.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, and Trump said, well, you're right. He goes, and that's why I wrote the executive order to restore the republic, and now it's up to you.
Yeah.
Right. So that means we, the people, have to do what we were supposed to do and assemble, right? So that's what Anna did, is call the states into session. And apparently her husband had one of the three ways, through being James Belcher, the Belcher seal, which is in the United States seal. And she said it's just divine providence how they ended up getting together through her research and who he was, and all this came together, and he was able to call the states into session. There was three ways it could happen. Apparently Trump was one of them, but he didn't do it. And her husband had the opportunity through that, that seal, that family air seal. And so that's what they did. And I am not able to find anything to deny that fact,
right?
But she mentioned that in her
I haven't heard anything to deny that either. I think it was legitimate.
Yeah. So, I mean, but ultimately, when we do the diligence and the research, besides that, you look at history and you look at how things are supposed to work, and this makes sense. There is a land jurisdiction, there is an air jurisdiction, and there is a sea jurisdiction, right? Where has the land jurisdiction been? It's been non-existent. It's been air and sea. Right. And we can see that through the people that are learning how to navigate those courts, right? So we can see the proof of the fraud. We can see the proof that there are no people populating the land. Right.
And the land, well, I think what people need to understand, the beauty of the land is that that's the common law. And
exactly.
And common law evolved in the land. And I just interviewed Richard Mayberry the other day, who wrote this phenomenal book called Whatever Happened to Justice. And if anybody wants to understand the beauty of the common law and how amazing it would be in terms of transitioning this country to a peaceful country without so many people locked up in prisons, and it's very simple. Two laws in the common law. There's just two laws. Do all that you've agreed to do. In other words, you have to follow your agreements, and never encroach on another person or their property. That's it. Those are the only two laws that there are. And then obviously, if you do either of those things, you break your agreement or you encroach on a person or the property, you're going to have to give restitution to the harmed person. But there is no crime if there is no victim.
Right. No
And
victim, no crime, no injured party, right?
exactly. And so what would that happen? How many people in prisons, locked up in prisons, which is the biggest expense that the states have, and a huge expense that the federal government has, incarcerating, locking up human beings behind steel cages who have not harmed anyone. Now, there are people there that have harmed people, but probably somewhere between 5 and 15% of the people
Yeah.
that are behind bars in this country as we speak are people that never harmed anyone. The government didn't like them for whatever reason, and they're there. Or it's drugs and things like that where there really was no victim. And
Well, you
so-
become,
Go ahead.
the way I've kind of perceived that whole racket is that I think about it like this, and I like to base things on possibilities, and this isn't based on fact, but if I can think about it, then how could not a criminal mind think about it and implement it, right? So if I can say, okay, I've got all these criminals, and you've got a profile, you've got a criminal profile. Well, if I'm housing a bunch of criminals to my benefit for revenue as well, and whatever I want to use at my dispose, well, if I need a job done, well, I can make an offer, right?
Right.
Who's the worst guy we got out there? How can I utilize his talents and skill sets, right? So I can make offers because I run the show, and I can say, hey, let's go talk to this guy. Maybe we can use his skill sets. How would you like to work for us? We need some things done. We'll give you this, that, and the other. They're called confidential informants, aren't they?
Yeah.
So they've got all these people that they can utilize at their disposal for whatever they want. Because if I was locked up, if they made me a deal and I was a criminal, do you think I wouldn't take it? You're going to pay me. I can get out of here and I can commit the crimes that I was committing before. That's a win-win.
Yeah.
Some people don't think of that, so they've got everything they need at their disposal. If you're a criminal world crime syndicate.
Yeah.
So take that into consideration with everything in this world, right? I mean, there's so much that so many rabbit holes we can go down to, but we won't, because the topic of conversation is not that. But you put that and apply that in all aspects of everything, and you can kind of see how that could get really infected if that was allowed to fester, which obviously we can see it has.
In this country, particularly more than any other country in the world, because if you look at the numbers, the percentage of people incarcerated in this country, I believe it's somewhere around 700 or 800 out of 100,000 in this country. The next closest to that is 200. And then everything else is, the average is probably 50 or 50 to 75 out of 100,000 incarcerated. And we're at over 700. Just look at that number alone, and it tells you what we've allowed to happen in this country to our justice system is insane. It really is.
There's no justice. It's just revenue, because if I comprehend this correctly, every person that is incarcerated, there's a bond. Right. So another trust account is created, and it's just more revenue, right?
More revenue, just like the bond that they create when we're born.
Exactly.
And on our dead corpse, which is basically the placenta,
right,
in the cord that they consider dead at birth. They put our birth certificate in all cap names, and that's really our corporation.
Capitis Diminutia.
Yeah, and they created a bond. It's on bonded paper, and you can look that up, right? What is it? The UCC core? No. The QSIP number, which is our social.
If you look anybody, I mean, you look at I haven't seen it on all of them, but some of them you can read it and find print on the bottom left of mine. It says printed on security note.
Right.
And you look at the companies, you can look at the companies that make them, and they're certificates. It's a certificate. So you look at the definition of certificate. You start using, looking up the definitions of word in Black's Law and Bouvier's, and you start to see, how everything was, I call it evil genius, because it really is. I mean, it's a genius. It's a genius way to manipulate the mind and the consciousness of beings. And it's really well done. It is. It's really well done. It's deep and twisted. It's great work, but it's evil work. And
Yeah,
you
and The
know,
Matrix, if people could watch, once you start to understand this and you watch the movie The Matrix, you realize that that movie was made to show us exactly what they've done to us. I mean, the people, in those tanks with the water plugged in, and it's at birth, and it's like symbology of the birth canal, and how they start to own us right there. And the movie The Matrix is amazingly accurate.
it's funny you brought that up because we watched that I hadn't seen it in a while, and I watched it again with a new perspective, right? And I was like, wow.
Yeah,
And when in that scene when they're walking down in the girl in the red dress scene, he goes, you got to understand, some of these people aren't ready to be unplugged, right?
right.
They're so in what does he say? I can't remember the term, but it means that they're so conditioned in their ways that they will defend the matrix to death, right? To their death, right? It's a beautiful quote. I was just trying to look it up so I could repeat it. But yeah, it's when you're conscious of it, you can see it, you can see clearly, and there's no question as to what's going on before you. And
Yeah,
when I
and
look around,
it's very similar to a prisoner who's been incarcerated for a long time, and they don't want to leave.
exactly, they're used to it, right?
Yeah,
They become hardened by it, and that's what they know, so they live it, and that's what they do. Let's see here. It's here you go. He says, you have to understand, most of these people are not ready to be unplugged, and many of them are so inured, so hopelessly dependent on the system that they will fight to protect it. And that's what we see happening.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Yep. And so, yeah, it's interesting to see how well the mind control and the conditioning subconscious programming works when you're more aware of it, because we were all there once at certain levels, and once you
Absolutely.
break these chains and conditioning, it becomes so clear, and what we're doing here becomes so clear. We all
Yeah,
have our doubts when we start to do it because it's the abyss, it's the unknown, but as you go further and further, the more confidence that you build, the more you learn, you really are operating in that light. You're operating in that higher consciousness, and you know how to approach situations calmly, right? You can conduct yourself without fear, without hate, without malice, and that goes a long way.
yes,
To the
but again, and that's the beautiful part of becoming a state national, and just peacefully saying, okay, I do not comply anymore. I do not consent. I'm moving my status. I'm no longer going to be a U.S. citizen. I'm moving and extraditing myself from the matrix to the republic and the common law and the law of the land. And so it's really a beautiful thing. It's not that complicated in terms of understanding the basics. When you dig down in it, there's a lot of detail, but don't worry about the detail right now. That's what I'm trying to tell people. And the message that I think you and I are both sharing with everyone is this is the time for this great awakening to occur. This is an expansion of consciousness. This is a shift in consciousness. And all of this that we've been through in the last year is waking people up. It's waking people up. Some people it's driving insane. Some people are not going to even make it. We just had a friend of our 9-year-old mother who just died the other day. She's 50 years old. She came to our house on Saturday and she said, I'm so confused. I just can't figure out what's going on. And the next day we find out she's dead.
Wow.
Nothing wrong with it. We don't even know what it was. But some people are just not able to handle a shift like we're going through right now. I think that's part of it. But for a lot of people, it's causing them to question what's been going on when they see the government acting the way they have, where they can determine which businesses are essential and which ones aren't. Oh my God. I mean, how in the world did we ever allow a government to decide whether this furniture store who's selling the same thing that Best Buy is selling, or one of the big Lowe's, and they can't open, but they can? Does the COVID vaccine know the difference between this guy selling the same thing that this guy is selling, it's insanity. And so
And it's plain as day, right? It's right there. It's plain as day.
The only conclusion you can come to if you have a rational mind or rational bone in your body is to realize that this is a prison system that we are living in, and this government is out of its mind. They just want more power and more control, and it's time for us to take back our freedom. And
and hold them accountable for the trespass. So I mean, you had mentioned the 2 ways, but ultimately it's a trespass, right? So we can break it down into one word, and it's trespass. You know, we're being trespassed upon, right?
Right.
Against our being, our natural God-given rights to move about amongst the earth, you know what I mean, and interact with each other. And we can see that's just being stripped away, and we're allowing that to happen and thinking that's normal. I mean, that's where we can see the masses, the consciousness of the masses has been really subverted.
Yes. And now it's
right?
being stirred up, and and in terms of what you said, you said something before. Now it's apparent, it's aware. I mean, all you have to do is read Klaus Schwab's book, COVID: The Great Reset, or the Fourth Industrial Revolution, or go online and read Agenda 21, the UN's Agenda 21 or Agenda 30.
2030.
Now, they make it all sound like, oh, it's because of climate change and it's social justice, and they put all these flowery terms in it. But really, when you dig down in it and you see what they're doing, is total control of everything from the world government.
It's basically your Hunger Games scenario.
It is total Hunger Games.
It's your Hunger Games scenario. You know, it's funny because this whole event, we can, if you take what they're telling you is a COVID-19, right? So let's look at this. SARS-CoV-2 is the coronavirus, right? That's the virus. They're telling you that SARS-CoV-2, from SARS-CoV-2, you get a disease called COVID-19. So the virus is SARS-CoV-2. There's no coronavirus called COVID-19. The coronavirus is SARS-CoV-2. SARS-CoV-2, they're telling you that you get this disease called COVID-19, where COVID-19 has never been isolated as anything.
No, never been isolated.
Right? So look at that right there in itself. So COVID-19 does not exist.
Right.
It's a made up nothingness that people are thinking is something, when it's just a regular coronavirus, one of the 7 that exist and that have existed and are just a normal type influenza A or B flu. Right. So there is no disease because of it. There is no the disease is the disease of the consciousness.
And there's no 500,000 deaths in the United States. There's maybe a 5% of that. Well, I think they've admitted to 96% of those so-called COVID deaths were had comorbidities. That is what, and now they've admitted that that's what those people died of, the comorbidities, the pneumonia.
Well, I mean, look what they did, right?
Cancer.
Look what they did. You target the elderly, which everybody loves grandma and grandpa, right? So what do? How do you instigate the fear? Well, let's start this thing, and we'll start with the elderly, because all it takes is for grandpa to die, or grandma. Then that instills the fear into the public realm, right? But yet they weren't dying of what they're telling you they're dying. They died more of because you couldn't go in the hospital, and they put them on these things called ventilators.
Yeah, the ventilators.
The ventilators were what was killing people. And whatever else we don't know that they were giving, or the undercare that they were given, right? Because nobody was allowed into the hospitals. Their family members couldn't go see them. So how would you know? And then so much evidence that they targeted anything. Like if I got hit by a motorcycle and I got tested positive, well, it was a COVID-19 death. So there's just so many proofs that lead to the facts that there is no COVID-19, that there are no real deaths, because if there was a real pandemic, Clyde, we wouldn't be having this video right now.
Right.
We'd be worried to death about catching a disease, a real virus that was deadly. Right. But yet I can walk outside and there's no chaos.
Right.
Pandemic is chaos.
Yeah.
The only chaos is going on.
Millions died.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you would know somebody, more than one by now, over a year later, that
right,
would die. You'd be able to have at least 5 or more, way more if it was a real pandemic. You might not even be here if it was a real pandemic at this point, because I tell you, I must be an anomaly because I haven't worn a mask once
right.
and I'm fine. And I interact with people all over the place. You know what I mean? So I must be the anomaly, you know?
Yeah,
If you
right.
want my blood, I'm over here. You know what I mean? I just, I don't know. I don't get it. And I know other people that are just like me. So I'm looking at the facts and I'm saying, well, nothing adds up. So for me, there is no thing happening. There's nothing happening,
No,
right?
all
It's
made
an
up.
event. It's a mind construct event through fear that's being manipulated to the masses, and that's all it is. I
And
mean,
the media is so good at it. They're so
very
good.
good.
They've been doing it for a long, long time, but they've been doing a phenomenal job for over a year, instilling fear in people over something that really doesn't even exist.
Exactly. Always having the boogeyman so that they can be the savior. It's problem, reaction, solution, right? They provide the problem, event 201. Anybody can go see it October 19th in New York, 2019, was it? Yeah. And that's when they had the event 201 up in New York. I mean, it was the same scenario. You got the key players there, right? And then a couple months later, boom, here it is, and everything in there, you can see how they talked about it. I mean, if you do your diligence, you can see that this is an event. That's what I call it when I talk about it. It's an event, and the event is playing out for the global reset, right? You crash the economies, right? Then you created the problem. Now they're providing the solution, right? And there you go, the Hegelian dialectic.
Yes.
That's exactly what we're seeing. And now look at the even more of it. We're in the silent war. I don't know if you've ever read the Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars document,
No.
but we've been in World War III since 1954, ever since the inception of the Bilderberg Group, right? And when you read that Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars document, it says it was found in 1979, or that's when this meeting was. It was 1979, and it says, "Welcome, gentlemen, to the 25th anniversary of the Third World War, dubbed the Silent War, using biological warfare."
Mhm.
Right? It says it right there. And you read the whole thing, you can see how it talks about the manipulation of the
Biological and
masses,
psychological, right?
biological and psychological warfare. Yeah. So it's all in there. And you can see how they perfectly map it out with the, electricity and the movement and flow of energy. Right. So you tweak a little bit here, you can manipulate this to change over here. So it's very well thought out. And, if you do your own diligence, people want to dig in and they can actually really see how it all works. Right.
Right.
And that's what we as people need to do. We need to learn to stand on our own 2 feet. We need to, assemble our common law land courts. And so we can, stop the trespass. How people say, how do you stop it? What's the solution? Well, we got to assemble our courts so we can hold the corporations
Mhm.
accountable and
Right.
dissolve their charters locally. Because
Yeah.
once they trespass, then we dissolve, and that
Yeah.
domino effect starts, right?
I do think that there is an intelligentsia on our side as well that is planning things out, and as well, I do believe that there are those people exist, but essentially it is up to us. That's the message. We are the power.
Absolutely.
The one thing that we have more than anything is a lot of us. There's billions of us around the world who want to be free, who want to enjoy the divine gift of free will that we have. And I know the divine creator did not create us with free will for it not to be used. They, the divine creator has given us that, and it's to be used. And right now, we aren't being able to use it fully because we're in this matrix, we're in this prison.
Absolutely.
We have to break out of it, and that's what we're doing. So you're
And
doing
those veils are being lifted. I mean,
Yeah.
if you really look at, the cycles, like the Yuga cycles and,
Yeah,
the other,
yeah. Sat
we're
Yuga,
in,
Kali Yuga.
yeah, we're in that, the cycles, coming out of the dark age, the, Kali Yuga into the
Kali
Sach Yuga.
Yeah, right.
There's that transitional period. And, look at, the Mayan prophecies. We're in that time of Armageddon, the battle of good and evil. And we're both charging at each other right now. Right. And all possibilities are playing out right now. But we do see the reality of it is that many of our people we're going to be losing. And sometimes I try to look at that rationally and be like, okay, well, if we are in this time and we're thinking, and we truly know that all is just consciousness, right? Those beings no longer resonate at the frequency we're moving into.
Mhm.
So whether you look at this virus and this vaccine program as a cleansing of the actual virus, it's kind of twisted to think that way. But is that another possibility that's playing out through the consciousness, right? So I don't know if you've ever read The Hidden Hand, Clyde. It's kind of an interesting read.
Okay.
The Hidden Hand, I'll send you the link for it.
Okay.
It may help ease people's minds, because that's the thing that keeps us trapped, is the mind. But when one realizes itself as true consciousness, and that this is all just a play, then in the end, we're all, we're all just here, manifested in form, either consciously engaging in the experiences or unconsciously engaging in the experiences.
Where can people find this book?
I can't remember the name of the website, but it's just I'll send it to you. And if you put it in the link in the video, put it in the link in the video.
Okay.
What's that?
If they Google Hidden Hand.
The Hidden Hand. It was by a Luciferian The Hidden Hand by a bloodline priest. Put in that, you might find that.
Okay, and that's their
yeah, it's an interesting interaction. I don't want to spoil it for anybody who reads it, but when I read it, it was the last thing I needed to that helped me really realize the depths of possibilities of what's occurring here as consciousness unfolds and how it plays.
Okay, very good.
It's a deeper level of awareness when you look at it from that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
When you're witnessing from that perspective, let's put it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll definitely check that out. Well, thank you very much. I know you have another meeting, and I really appreciate the time. I think that we accomplished a lot of what we wanted to in terms of explaining what's going on. Hopefully people will look up what's Judge Anna's website?
AnnaVonRights.com, and she's got over 3,000 articles, and it's quite a body of work. To end on this note, let's take someone that works in a field. Let's just take like CERN. You look at those guys and what they're doing. They're focused on that. They know that world, right?
Right.
Well, you look at Anna von Reitz. She knows her world, right? Like, I can't comprehend what those people are on it. All the knowledge and wisdom and the information that she's gathered over a 40-year period, right? Coming in here for even 5 years, you can't even grasp what that is. You can't get all that from an hour video or 2-hour video or 10 2-hour videos. Right. She's got so much that she knows of how this all works, that when you start comprehending it in that fashion and you start to look into this, you have to honor that. Right. You have to really honor it, because when you start really digging yourself, all the stuff she talks about, as you do your own diligence, you'll see those puzzle pieces start coming together, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, this is really how it works. Like, this is what it is. Right. Don't believe anyone. Perceive for yourself and do your own diligence. That's all I have to say.
Okay, and I want to, so that is once I want to give people things that they can go to. So Judge AnnaVonRights.com.
Not judge, just AnnaVonRights.com.
AnnaVonRights.com. Okay.
Right. Or the AmericanStatesAssembly.net. You can go there as well. But going to her website and looking up those articles is key, because there's a lot there. You can put in any topic you want and learn quite a bit.
And
it's a body of work.
And I want to also, because I believe between Judge Anna and David Lester Straight, we've got two people that know more about this than anybody else. And when I interviewed David yesterday, he gave me this: PayPal.me/David Lester Straight, STRAIGHT. So PayPal.me/David Lester Straight. And for $80, you can buy a thumb drive that has a world of knowledge in it, on his knowledge. So that's one thing. And then also, if you're in Florida, we have David coming here to Sarasota, June 25th, 26th, and 27th, 12 hours a day for 3 days in a row. $165 it's going to be for the 3 days, including all your meals. So it's a tremendous opportunity to sit for 3 days and get 36 hours of instruction in all of this knowledge directly from David Straight. So those two things, and Judge Anna, I think if everybody gets those, that's where you can get started on this journey. And
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And just for the people that hear you saying judge, just know that she's never been a bar attorney and she never will be. And maybe more of justice would be the right terminology. I know she uses judge as well, but she's worn many hats. But you can be a justice on the land, so you don't have to have a bar card, which many people think.
Or maybe she could consider herself a common law judge.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what it would be.
Right.
But I think we use the term justice, not judge, on the land.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming to this. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Stan, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Clyde.
And we'll be seeing you very soon to get people at the David Straight event.
Excellent.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Clyde. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.